Beer is one of the oldest prepared beverages in human history. Its story is not one of a single invention, but a gradual discovery over millennia. Long before writing, our ancestors likely experienced fermentation's magic. Chemical analysis of pottery jars from the Neolithic village Jiahu, northern China, revealed residue of a fermented drink. Dated to around 7000 BCE, it was made from rice, honey, and fruit. Not beer in the modern sense, but one of humanity's earliest alcoholic experiments, a crucial step toward today's drink. Grain-based beer's roots lie deep in the Fertile Crescent. Evidence from Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, dated to about 9500 BCE, suggests wild cereals were cultivated, perhaps for brewing, not just bread. Stone troughs at the site show oxalate residues, a fermentation byproduct occurring when grain and water are combined. Some researchers propose agriculture's rise, from nomads to settled life, was partly to secure grain for brewing. Imagine people gathering wild grains, perhaps barley or emmer wheat. A container of soaked grain, left exposed, created the perfect home for wild yeasts in the air. Microscopic fungi consumed released sugars, turning them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Spontaneous fermentation was natural, a happy accident waiting to be found. The liquid would be slightly alcoholic, nutritious, and safer than contaminated water. This discovery reshaped human culture for millennia. The primitive brew was far from modern beer, likely a thick, porridge-like gruel, cloudy with grain solids and yeast. Consumed fresh, no preservation methods existed. Its effects were undeniable. It provided calories, essential B vitamins, and a safe source of hydration. It also changed consciousness, became a social lubricant central to communal rituals, celebrations, daily life. This accidental discovery laid the groundwork for a global industry and culture. The civilizations of Mesopotamia were among the first to formalize and document the art of brewing. In the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians elevated beer from a simple gruel to a cornerstone of their society. Beer, which they called cash, was not a luxury, but a staple of the daily diet for people of all social classes. It was a source of nutrition, a form of payment for laborers, a sacred offering to the gods. Cuneiform tablets contain detailed accounts of beer rations and recipes. Among them is the hymn to Ninkasi, circa 1800 BCE, a prayer and practical brewing recipe. The hymn describes baking bapir, crumbling it into water, mashing the mixture, and collecting the fermented liquid. Brewing was revered as a divine gift. Babylonians expanded the tradition. The Code of Hammurabi set laws for taverns, setting fair prices and prescribing harsh punishments. Diluting beer could mean death by drowning. Records mention at least 20 varieties: dark, light, sweet, and spiced or honeyed beers. Barley predominated. Emmer was also used. Beer was thick and unfiltered, often sipped through long straws to avoid sediment. Art shows groups sharing a large vessel. For them, beer was the liquid of civilization. From Mesopotamia, brewing traveled to ancient Egypt. There it was called henket, considered a gift from the god Osiris. It was staple food, a wage for laborers at Giza, and vital to rituals and funerary offerings. Papyrus prescriptions used beer as a medicine solvent. Egyptians refined malting to unlock enzymes for fermentable sugars. Finds at Abydos, over 5 millennia old, reveal production at thousands of liters, supplying workers and armies. Brewing spread into cooler Europe, where grain beer thrived as grapes struggled. Tacitus described strong barley or wheat beer among Germanic tribes. In the north, beer meant calories, warmth, and community. For centuries, beer was domestic, often brewed by women, alewives. The recipe was simple: malted grain, water, and yeast. Before hops, ales were flavored and preserved with gruit, herbal blends like bog myrtle, yarrow, and rosemary. Between the 9th and 12th centuries, hops took hold, transforming beer. hops would forever change its character. During the Middle Ages, innovation moved to monasteries. Organized literate orders, Benedictines, Cistercians, Augustinians, became master brewers. They had land and resources, brewed for sustenance, especially during fasts, and offered hospitality to pilgrims. To work is to pray. Monk brewers applied meticulous discipline. They improved methods over generations. Monasteries standardized hops, adding flowers to wort for bitterness and aroma. Hops inhibited spoilage, enabling storage and transport, a revolutionary change. Hopped beer diverged from older herb ales. Brewing moved commercial. Guilds arose to regulate, ensure quality, and protect the trade. In Germany, concern for quality produced the Reinheitsgebot. Proclaimed in Bavaria in 1516 by Duke Wilhelm IV, beer could be made only from barley, hops, and water. Yeast, its role not yet understood, was the silent partner. By the late Middle Ages, hops were widespread, breweries common, regulations established. Beer was an economic powerhouse and a source of tax revenue. In Bavaria, a different yeast and long, cool fermentation took hold. Lager. For centuries it remained regional, waiting for science to help it conquer the world. The 18th and 19th centuries ushered in change. Steam power transformed breweries into mechanized factories, grinding malt, pumping wort, hoisting materials. Porter in London became one of the first industrial-scale beers. Thermometers and hydrometers brought control. Temperatures measured, sugars and alcohol calculated, turning art into repeatable science. Data-driven brewing emerged. Louis Pasteur proved yeast drives fermentation, identified spoilage microbes, and introduced pasteurization to stabilize beer. In 1883, Hansen isolated pure yeast strains, giving brewers control. With artificial refrigeration, lager yeasts fermented cool and clean, and the style went global. Before refrigeration, lager was winter brewed and cave stored. Cold transport made it year-round and global. German immigrants brought lager to America. Anheuser-Busch and Miller leveraged technology to build empires. Pale lager became the world's dominant style. Beer has been a powerful social and cultural force, a centerpiece of rituals and gatherings. In Europe, the public house became the secular heart, socializing business and news. For workers of the Industrial Revolution, pubs offered respite from factory hardship and crowded housing. Brewing created wealth and employment from the start. Governments relied on beer taxes. Demand for barley, hops, and other inputs shaped farming worldwide. But concerns rose. Temperance movements linked alcohol to poverty, crime, and domestic violence. In the U.S., this culminated in prohibition from 1920 to 1933. Today, a complex web of regulations governs licensing, production standards, taxation, advertising, and legal drinking ages. Warnings, youth protections, and anti-drunk driving efforts define the contemporary landscape. Society continues balancing enjoyment and economic benefit with public health. It is an evolving relationship with an ancient drink. The story of beer is, in many ways, the story of humanity. Its journey mirrors our own, from accidental discoveries of our Neolithic ancestors to precise, science-driven production. A tale of continuity and change. The fundamental process, the transformation of grain, water, and yeast, has remained unchanged for millennia. Yet every aspect has been refined, perfected, and reinvented through ingenuity. From thick gruel shared by the fire to thousands of distinct styles, crisp pilsners to complex imperial stouts. From divine gifts and labor payments to monastic perfection of hops, beer catalyzed advances in steam power, microbiology, and refrigeration. It centered social life, funded states, and drew moral crusades. The late 20th century craft movement revived diversity and local character. Today, beer is both everyday staple and cultural artifact. Simple ingredients, a complex human story still being written.